Welcome to Frequency Matters, the RF and Microwave Update. I'm Pat Hindle, and we have a special guest today. Bob Donahue, CEO of Anokiwave, joins us. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you, Pat.
So you were on the show a couple years ago before IMS 2014, and you kind of introduced us to Anokiwave and the trend toward millimeter wave systems and AESA architectures. Can you give us an update on what's been going on since then?
First, thank you for inviting us back. We think that actually it's been an incredible, exciting couple of years. What we see is the world is turning upside down after all. It's a small world after all. What we've seen is that it's common knowledge now that data rates have to increase by 1,000x by the end of the decade, and connected mobile units are going to go from 5 billion to 50 billion, so that's common knowledge. What's new that's just recently happened is maybe the World Mobile Congress in Barcelona in February was kind of the status pistol going off for the 5G race that's on.
Yeah, we did notice that. It was a lot of activity.
There was a lot of activity. Also, what we can see is the United Nations and the ITU in the United Nations and the FCC in the United States and world bodies are racing to open up orders of magnitude more bandwidth than we've ever seen. The last time we saw anything like this, you may not remember, was back in the mid-'80s when they opened up the bandwidth for what's now cell phones.
Right.
So those are kind of big changes, mega trends for the industry. What it means for us is that silicon has become ubiquitous now because of Moore's law at the millimeter wave frequencies. So you can use not even advanced nodes, older nodes are now useful in silicon, and these are now 300 millimeter wafers.
Right.
So they're big wafers, older nodes on depreciated factories. So silicon at millimeter waves can be extremely inexpensive. Besides that, something that's subtle that's happened is an architecture called a phased array or AESA, which has been prevalent for 40 to 50 years in the aerospace and defense field, is now starting to become more prevalent and will be the backbone of what we think is modern communications going forward. And the reason for that is as you go up in frequency, we become more challenged with propagation characteristics. So the way to solve that is to go to an antenna structure that has beam pointing.
Right.
It forms a beam and it points a beam, and so now you're not spraying energy everywhere, you're efficiently pointing at where the energy goes. That's something new and different that's coming along. Behind the scenes, what we believe and what we've seen is that's leading to a convergence of architectures from military and commercial and from radars and communication. All of these architectures are converging around these silicon AESAs and the core chips that are behind them. And so that we think is very new and different and has never happened before. And so that's where we sit at this point in time.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that architecture. So there's kind of a real change in the way things are being architectured with the AESAs, and there's kind of a trend towards highly integrated chips. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about how that's changing the industry and what that means to Anokiwave?
Certainly. I'll give an analogy that we use kind of commonly, which is when they invented structural steel, they stopped making wooden bridges the way they make them. Okay, so you don't see wooden bridges made from structural steel. You started to see the architecture of the bridge completely change to suspension bridges like the Golden Gate Bridge that we'll see at the IMS show and the Zakim Bridge in Boston here. So we think that's the type of change that you're seeing. It's a true architectural shift in the entire industry that really has not happened in like 25 years. When we were last on here, we had mentioned how we repositioned Anokiwave 3 years ago to kind of be at the center of that, because what we focused on are doing three things: silicon millimeter wave core chips, silicon AESA core chips, and front ends in millimeter waves, primarily silicon, because we think there won't be a lot of 3.5 up there, and that the cost structure goes up a step function if you add 3.5 into it, although we do 3.5 front ends as well. So that's how we've repositioned our company to take advantage of all that, and now what we see is that we've grown the company, and since we were here, about 10x, and we've shifted that to a product company, so we're ISO 9000 certified, we're in production at this point in time. So we're growing pretty rapidly, and we think that we're strategically positioned right at the center point of where the industry is converging for the next generation of architectural solutions.
And so IMS 2016 is coming up, and I'm sure you may have big news for there. Is there anything you can share with us on the show?
Very good question, Pat. So at the IMS 16 in San Francisco, we'll be releasing what we consider the very first silicon millimeter wave core chip for AESA applications for 5G, specifically at 28 gigahertz.
Wow.
So this is something that is new and different. We believe it's planar, it fits the lattice spacing. We're actually in pilot production at this moment on it, and you'll see it first here at Frequency Matters with Pat Hindle.
Great, thank you very much. So how did you pick 28 gigahertz? You think that's kind of a center point where a lot of the 5G activity is going to focus on?
So the beautiful thing about what's happening right now is it's complete chaos. Okay, so around the world, as we said, there's this battle for frequency bands that's happening. It looks like Verizon in the United States has chosen 28 gigahertz as the basis point to go forward right now. Also, South Korea and Japan have chosen that. Worldwide, there are other bands in play. So you could imagine that while we're releasing this chip, we have other bands that we're coming out with, and there's probably 2 generations of technology under development that you don't see beneath the surface with us.
Wow.
But the chaos of all these different bands and all these architectures plays beautifully well to an early stage company like us that moves really fast.
Yeah, you've really positioned yourself well, and I think you're really at that leading edge there.
We were very fortunate to have a good base. The founders of this company, Nitin and Dipti Jain, formed it in 1999, and they focused on millimeter waves. And many of us were the customers of them, so we understood how good they were, but it gave the company a rock basis to build on. So right now we have 10 years of experience in building millimeter wave silicon core chips for AESIS.
Wow.
So we're very fortunate that way. Thank you.
Great, very impressive stuff, and it's always good to talk with you, and we really appreciate you making that announcement on this show. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pat.